let everyone know. Um, we have quite a few folks on the call here, so we probably won't do a round of introductions. That may take a little while here. But nonetheless, if you want to go ahead and ask any questions during any of our presentations today, please feel free to introduce yourself at that time. So with that being said, we'll kick things off here. I think we have a pretty diverse and interesting agenda here for you all this morning. First up, I'd like to introduce Mr. Todd Lease from the Pennsylvania Turnpike Commission. Basically, he is, if you don't know him, he's a jack of all trades, but more importantly, he's the Traffic Incident Management Coordinator for the Pennsylvania Turnpike Commission. And he wants to talk a little bit about the Penn Start update and how it will be affecting bringing some jobs here and some technology to our region. So with that being said, I will turn it over to Mr. Todd Lease. Todd, if you want to share your screen, if not, I can certainly share it for you. Just let me know. Todd, can you hear me? We may be having some technical difficulties with Todd. We can certainly move on to the next presentation if need be. Give him another couple seconds here. All right. Todd seems like maybe having some technical difficulties here, so we'll move on to the next presentation. Introduce Bill Hope and Jeff Engel from Federal Highway Pennsylvania Division Office. I have two different presentations this morning, just some updates on what's going on at the federal level. So Bill, I'll turn it over to you first if you want to go ahead and share your screen in your presentation, and then after we can we'll introduce Jeff and bring up his presentation as well. So Bill, it's all yours.
All right, thanks Josh, appreciate it, and good morning everyone. Josh, can you just verify you can see my screen there? I'm sharing everything.
Yep, we can see you.
It's good?
Yep, we're good.
All right. I guess the first thing when I wanted to start off, I've heard discussions around in different meetings, stuff when we or the state or anybody talks about towards zero deaths or vision zero, and there still seems to be some reluctance and some hesitancy and with this goal. And I wanted to start off today's presentation with a short video here that really just kind of puts it into perspective and kind of help get you, behind that if you're not already. But here, I'll let it play, and hopefully the audio will work. I found a new button and see if it works.
So last year, 213 people died on our roads. What do you think would be a more acceptable number?
Acceptable? 70 maybe? Probably 70.
Can you send 70? Actually, this is what 70 people looks like.
It's my family.
So now, what do you think would be a more acceptable number?
0. 0.
Okay, well, that's a good lead in to where I'm going to start off with next. And probably the biggest update that occurred in the last year, if you haven't heard already, is USDOT's adoption of this National Roadway Safety Strategy. And really what this strategy is, it outlines the department's comprehensive approach to significantly reducing serious injuries and deaths on our roads. And it's really a first step in working towards this, long-term ambitious goal of reaching zero fatalities. As you can see here, some of the key components for the strategy formally adopts the safe systems approach, which you may or may not have heard of in the past. It identifies new priority actions, makes changes to our existing practices and approaches, and really tries to target those solutions that have the most substantial impact. And also, it leverages a once in a generation investment in infrastructure through the bipartisan infrastructure law. And this is something we at the Federal Highway Administration cannot do alone, and need all of our partners at every level to help solve this crisis. It's too far. Wow, this thing is sensitive. So here you see the safe system approach, and it's one of the key components of the National Roadway Safety Strategy, and is somewhat of a shift from conventional infrastructure, focused safety approach, and really, while no crashes are desirable, the safe system approach prioritizes those crashes that result in death and serious injury. It recognizes that human beings make mistakes and are vulnerable, and really attempts to design a system, that works together, that provides layers of redundancy to lessen the effects of these mistakes and vulnerabilities. Fatalities and serious injuries have really been on the rise the last few years in Pennsylvania, and on a national level, they've been increasing over the last decade. Even more so, crashes among the vulnerable road users, specifically, pedestrians and bicyclists, have been increasing even faster. And this has really resulted in a focused emphasis on these vulnerable road users to try and reverse this trend. Addressing all the various road related fatality types is really going to take a holistic approach, and that is what the National Roadway Safety Strategy attempts to do. And part of that strategy to address all road users, the bipartisan infrastructure law created this Safe Streets and Roads for All grant. This grant provides $1 billion between 2022 and 2026, and this grant specifically is addressed at non-state entities such as an MPO, county, and local government. It's a little bit different than the HSIP program that was addressed for the states. Flip them on the right slides. Like every time I touch it, it changes slides. But there are two types of projects that can be applied for. These are the implementation grants and action grants. And basically, before you could do an implementation grant, the applicant must have a safety action plan in place that meets the requirement of the grant. This is somewhat similar to the HSIP program that requires states to have a strategic highway safety plan. But this is, like I said, addressed at those non-state entities. And this is kind of a slide that really gives you some direction on how you can go about figuring out what you need to do. And let me see if I can go back to this last slide. I just wanted to point out up here in the upper corner, there's a link to that grant if you want to find out more information. And really, there's a lot of details on there between the different plan types and what you need to have for both. So I just want to make sure I pointed that out. And like I said, this is telling you, to look at what you have. Do you already have an action plan? If yes, does it meet the requirements? Because there's specific requirements that the action plan has to have before you can do those implementation plans. And the implementation plans really specifically have to, look at those actions that were in your action plan and address one of those. And finally, I just wanted to, thank you guys for the opportunity, to speak this morning. Just give a brief introduction on some of the things we're working on, and really just remind everyone what the focus and purpose of everything we do, whether directly or not. You see my contact information's up here in the corner. So if anybody has any questions after this meeting today or wants to, ask me anything, by all means, you can call or email me. And with that, I'll turn it over to the presentation over to Jeff Engel, also of our office, and he's going to provide some information on operations. As soon as I figure out how to stop sharing. Jeff, it's all yours.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yep, you are good, Jeff.
Great. All right, let me see if I can't get my presentation up here.
We see it. You are good to go.
Okay, let me get this thing out of the way here. So, yeah, thanks for having me speak here a little bit. Hey, I'm Jeff Engel. I am a transportation operations engineer here in the Pennsylvania division of FHWA. I basically assist Dan Walston, who is our operations program manager, on all things that are operations. I'm sure you folks know Dan pretty well. Dan's been a real champion for operations for a long time. Dan couldn't be with us today. He's out of town. So I'm just going to give you a little rundown. Again, the question was, hey, what are the initiatives that FHWA has regarding operations? And for the most part, it's just pushing TSMO. PennDOT is well entrenched, into the process. Nationwide, states are at various stages. But I see Doug Tomlinson's going to even speak here a little bit after me. You go in and talk to Doug and his folks, Ryan McNary or whatever. They've got a lot of irons in the fire, and it's great to see. Operations, hey, is linked at the hip with safety. So the whole premise is let's improve congestion out there. Improve travel time. Reduce carbon emissions. With the improved travel times. Improve economies. With improved travel times. And also, reduce crashes if we can, level out our congestion. So with those two kind of underlying thoughts, basically, we're federal government, right? So we have numerous publications. So what I'm really showing you on the first page here is this is not a pretty presentation for you guys, but it's just a simple PDF, a bunch of pages here that folks can grab this thing. Then I'll post it. There's links to all kinds of information. So what you're seeing on the first page here is really the link to our FHWA operations website, and that link here, communicating with other organizing and planning for operations, which has sort of been the last few years is let's get all these DOTs kind of really thinking about TSMO and getting it into their game plan, which, like I said, PennDOT has jumped into it. So if you were to actually go to this website, basically you're going to find all kinds of drop downs and fact sheets and presentations and links to publications. You could sit here and read these things for a week on end and probably put you to sleep at night. But if you're really looking for any information, boy, this link is really the first place to go, and then just kind of worm your way through everything. So some of the drop downs are like regional collaboration and coordination. That's where we're kind of heading with some things. It's just not just one individual location. We're trying to connect everybody. Second, there's a link in there to like the Department of Homeland Security, even, and there's information in there on, and even in programs that the Homeland Security offers, some funding for some things. So you can go in that direction. A couple of the others, like how does planning and operations relate to? You get into the specifics, corridor management. There's links to our JPO site in there. There's travel time reliability papers. Numerous links to Sharp 2 reports, et cetera, et cetera. A lot of documentation. The next two bullets really are the ones that I highlighted: analysis and performance management. And then the next one will be integrating operations into planning and programming. And so, over the last few years, everybody's jumping into TSMO, moving forward. Where this thing's kind of heading is, we really want to be able to now put some of these things into practice, which, like I said, PennDOT has, let's say, down in District 6 there, variable speed limits on the Schuylkill Expressway. It's been in place for a year now, and they're starting to, monitor it. And I think they have a feeling that, guess what, it has improved some travel time down there, and they think it's only 1 year, in. So you're not sure about crashes until you really get a few years into it. But thinking that that is improving, crash numbers down there. So, so the biggest thing is there's so much data, that we're now picking up with cameras and everything else, the third party groups that can provide data to us. So, like I mentioned, Ryan McNary, working for Doug over there, an enormous amount of data that they're starting to get into and they're looking at, and they have been using it. And that's where we're heading in the future here is let's get all this data that we can. Let's somehow try and, evaluate it, say, guess what? This improvement, this VSL costs us a certain amount of dollars. but look at the improvement that we have. We've got decreased travel times, and we have reduced crashes, and there's a benefit cost there. So when we have this data driven approach, that's going to sell it, and that's going to sell it to the people that, the next bullet down then is this integrating operations into planning and programming. Let's get everybody involved into this analysis, measurement, kind of identify benefits, and then let's work it into planning so we can prioritize things, and then ultimately the real big kicker is there. Let's get it programmed or whatever. We got to sell this stuff to the people that ultimately make the decision on, okay, this highway improvement or this bridge improvement or whatever outweighs your ITS project. Well, maybe the ITS project can really show some benefits. So that's where I think what I'm trying to get at is just simply with this first page is, the initiative now is going forward. A lot of legwork, it ain't happening overnight, but getting the data, analyzing it, kind of prioritizing from there, working it in. So anyway, these first two bullets, you'll see that on the first highlight one there, the analysis, performance, measurements. There's a training announcement. Actually, next Tuesday and Wednesday, I think, there's a virtual training. And I'm going to run down to the bottom here because I included that announcement. So you could go on our website here or whatever. And the training is using analysis, modeling, and simulation tools for more integrated and active transportation systems management. So that's what we're starting into is like, hey, here's some information. Doug might come on and say, hey, Ryan's, way ahead of us here. But, the entire nation is not. But please, feel free to jump on this thing or whatever, all you folks out there in that Pittsburgh region, all your municipalities or whatever, because that's where we're heading. So just wanted to make notice of that webinar next Tuesday and Wednesday, if you want to call it a webinar. Then the next bullet here is just integrating, down into planning and programming. And so just recently, our headquarters, along with the NHI, have developed a couple modules, or 3 modules. The first 2 modules were just released. They're just strictly going to be virtual. I think one of them was like 6 hours, the other one's 2 hours, and they were just released, I think, a couple weeks ago. But it's taking you down into that integrating, ops into planning and programming. And also I did attach the notice, a little flyer that was put out here. So, if you folks grab this document from me, you can take a look at this thing. These, like I said, the first 2 courses, NHI 133-131 and 133-132, they're virtual, 6 hours, 2 hours, I think. And then the third one is the interesting one where there's going to be 3 pilots done. And the first one is already scheduled, I think, with the state of Louisiana. The second one, I think we're in coordination with another state, I'm not sure, out west. The third one, we're hoping we're going to bring this to SPC. And Josh, we've got a phone call coming up, here to try and figure this out. This third portion would be sometime in the spring. So there's some time here. But what that third course then is going to be is after, everyone sits through these first 2 courses, let's say, and kind of, gets a little bit of base knowledge or whatever. That third one is going to be interactive. It's going to be live. Our folks from headquarters will be up, and, just sort of a little discussion on how we can really get TSMO strategies drilled down, hard into planning and programming. So that's that notification in there. And that's pretty much, what this first page is telling you. So there's links to all this stuff. Hopefully that's where we're going. That's an initiative that's sort of just starting, and I think everybody in Pennsylvania is already kind of head down that path. Then, my next couple of pages are simply funding. I don't want to spend too much time on this, but again, you guys can grab this thing with this the first line here is a link to our bipartisan infrastructure law website, and in there you can get to everything. All I've done then is on the next page or two, kind of mention a few of the discretionary grants that are new and apply to ops. So the first one is the SMART grant program, which that notice funding opportunity came out September, a month ago. It's due November 18th. I'm not sure, if any of you folks, have looked at this or are chasing it, but, hopefully. And that's to conduct demonstration projects, pretty similar to what's been done in the past. Some of the grant money that's been done, and that you folks have actually gotten some money. I think that project that Scott's going to talk about next or whatever has some funds that kind of line up with what this is. But please go to the website or whatever. There's just all the information in there on this grant. The next one is this ATTAIN, Advanced Transportation Technology and Innovative Mobility, and that's kind of a same thing. It came out a month ago. It's due in another month, and that's kind of almost the same thing. A little bit different. What we're hoping for is this kind of unique applications of smart technology. Meaning, if you read through this thing, and I'm not going to, that's for you guys to look at, but try and take it down, and maybe the uniqueness would be take it into areas that wouldn't traditionally get this. Try and bring your technology to like this last line in the first paragraph says, persons with visible and hidden disabilities or elderly individuals. So it's kind of coming up with kind of a unique setting, maybe for some of this technology. That one is out on the street right now. This one's kind of interesting where, take a look at it. It's just kind of a unique thing or whatever. I can't even explain all of it to you, but it'll start out with some really small grants, maybe $1 million or $2 million, total 12 million, maybe in that first year. And then from that, and it's just going to be like the first year, a grant where you just kind of get started into it, and then you present, your game plan, and then boom, the next years, additional monies will be thrown to you if you got something unique going on in that realm. So, third grant would be congestion relief. That notice funding opportunity is to be determined. Keep your eyes and ears out for that. But again, it's aimed at relieving congestion. This one is strictly for urbanized populations over 1 million, so it's kind of limited on who's going to be chasing that one. The NEVI, obviously, that's how we're trying to understand, all the ins and outs about that thing. It's a tough thing to figure out. That notice of funding opportunity is planned for late this year, early next year. That's through PA. We're giving the money to PA. I think we've given them, I think it's $170 million or whatever over 5 years, like 25 million each year for 5 years. So PA will have more information on that. Multimodal, which we've had these infras and builds and whatnot. So this multimodal is kind of in line with that. We already awarded infras and et cetera. I think the megas are maybe in now being evaluated. Pardon my ignorance on some of this funding, but that multimodal. And again, when you go to the websites, all the dollar values will be in there. I don't want to, burden everybody here today with all the detail, but there's just a lot of money lined up, every year for the next 5 years. Some pretty big chunks of money for things. So please look into this bill website and chase everything you can. This next bullet here was this popped up just the other day. It's U.S. Department of Homeland Security, Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency, the CISA. They came out with something. It's through bill, but they're going to administer it. And the NOFO says October 2022. So I'm not sure if it just came out or it's going to come out in a few days. But the applications are going to be due November 15th. And so there's a link here I gave for you, Cyber Grants, CISA, and that'll explain, there's a few $1 million or so in there to spend on securing your system. So please check into that. And then the last one, the bullet I just said is, your typical EDC, your AID, your stick, your T2. Hopefully you guys are all familiar with that. There's a link here that maybe explains a little bit. You know, those are traditional, you know, discretionaries that again are going to continually be funded, and not sure if it's, you know, higher funding, you know, at the moment here now with Bill from traditional, but those are some other grants that are um, aimed at operations types efforts. So the last bullet, my last page was just be when we talk about initiatives, freight initiatives. That's just another thing that, you know, we really are, you know, pushing. We've got the I-81 corridor that I know Dan Walson sits on. I mean, maybe some of you folks do as well. So we just came out with a truck parking development handbook, you know, September 2022, just published it. So there's some, you know, information in there that might help everyone out on developing, you know, truck parking. So take a look at that. This right here, the next bullet, is probably the key thing I wanted to mention. Was we just in September 2022 put out a memo, and sometimes it's hard to find, so that's why I gave you the link here. And I also did attach it to the back here, so that's why this PDF is 17 pages. If we get down to here, here's a memorandum, and what it does is it tells you, guess what? Here's how you can go about funding truck parking. It mentions about the state freight plans. You know, those are Bill is now requiring, you know, some more concentration, some more efforts in the state freight plans, and one of them is you got to address your where you're at with truck parking facilities. So that's new. That's what this page is about. But then you get into the various fundings here. You know, you can chase after NHFP funds. You can chase after HSIP. Might be a little bit difficult to justify, but you can. NHPP, protect right here. This E. Same thing. That thing is not out yet, that NOFO, but you can chase after protect funds for truck parking. Carbon reduction program you can chase after. This is primarily, I think, for truck stop electrification systems. So, you know, if Pennsylvania can, you know, even get to that point or whatever, there's another a program that maybe you can chase down into that. Trucking firms or manufacturers are looking into, you know, electric vehicles. So anyway, CMAQ. Also, you can actually use for some truck parking and truck electrification systems. So CMAX funds might be available. Some of these funds you can go up to 100% Fed share. So this memo is kind of a neat memo. You guys should take a look at it or whatever. Might help you out a little bit. So that's pretty much, I think, my presentation. You know, data is out there. You know, PennDOT's working, chasing down all the data, and we want to, you know, get data-driven reasons for getting projects into planning and really into that programming. You know, we need to sell people on the benefits of it, and there are definitely absolutely benefits on all this TISMO stuff we're into, all this ITS project stuff we're into. So I'll leave it at that and jump out of here and let you guys continue on.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Bill and Jeff, for your presentation. Actually, as a side note, we at SPC went after the grant early on. I'm drawing a blank. Smart. I think it's Smart. Oh, geez.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's Smart.
Yeah. There's so many. Yeah, there's so many. It's confusing.
So many. So just wanted to throw that one out there. You know, we with our planning partners went after that. So
Great. Wonderful.
so I'll open it up to the floor here. If there's any questions for Jeff and Bill, please feel free to unmute. And then I believe Todd is ready to go. So we'll turn it back over to Todd. If there's any questions here in the meantime, please feel free to ask Bill or Jeff.
Hey, Bill, this is Keith Johnson. Is Bill there?
Bill, you're muted.
Sorry, was there a question for me?
That's right. Yeah, Bill. Hey, this is Keith Johnson. Those NOFO grants you're talking about for the planning grants, do you have any idea of like the range of the dollar amounts, or there? I assume there's due dates on there. Just go to the website to find out.
And you're talking about the Safe Streets for All.
Right.
Yeah, the first year, and I forgot to mention that was due September 15th. So they've already been in. I've heard from a few folks at our headquarters office that there were a lot of submissions for each category, the action plans and the implementation plans, and they're reviewing all those. But no, there was no set guidance on how much one could be versus the other. It was really going to be based on the merits of each one. I think obviously the action plan was going to require less of a background because that's the whole point, is to help the local government units to develop an action plan, so maybe down the road they can get into that implementation plan and actually see some of these things be constructed.
Okay. Thanks.
Yep.
Any other questions for Jeff or Bill? All right, hearing none. I believe Todd, if you are back now, I think he had a minor technology issue, but it sounds like he is. Yes, we'll get the presentations out to the entire group, and we'll post this on our website as well. Thanks for that question, Jason. But I think Todd is ready to go. So Todd, I will turn it back over to you. Todd Lease, if you're not familiar, is the Traffic Incident Management Coordinator with the Pennsylvania Turnpike Commission. And Todd, you are good to go if you want to share your screen, or I can certainly share the screen for you. Just let me know.
Josh, if you don't mind sharing, if you have that handy, that would work great.
Not at all. I will get that up here. There we go. Todd, go ahead.
All right. So what I want to share with you today is I don't see it up on the screen yet, Josh. Hopefully people can see it.
Can everyone see it, or is it not up yet?
Yeah, we're not seeing it.
Let me see what I can do here, Josh, see if this works.
Oh, it still says it's connecting on my end here. Just try to close it out again.
How about that? Are you able to see my screen now?
Yep,
We can
we
see
can see your
yours.
screen. Yep.
Okay. So I'm going to share the PennStart track. So PennStart started with our TIM Summit that we had in 2016, November 2016, down at FEMA, that many of you or some of you were a part of. And Tony Menso from Federal Highway approached me up at the Traffic Engineering and Safety Conference, December of 2016, and asked how we would like to build a traffic incident management training facility in Pennsylvania. And of course, my response was, yes, let's do it. And I'll take a check for $40 million to make it happen. So the check never materialized, but we have made progress on the PennStart track. Originally, it was going to be a partnership between the Turnpike, PennDOT, and Penn State University. Because of COVID, there were some delays and there were some issues that couldn't be worked out. So the new location, I'm happy to announce, is going to be much closer to all of you in Western PA. It's going to be at the Regional Industrial Development Corporation, the RIDC site, which is located off the New Staten Interchange of the Pennsylvania Turnpike in the Westmoreland County Advanced Technology Research Park. What we're trying to do with this facility is, number one thing is train emergency responders to work safe on the highway. We've had, unfortunately, I've just heard of another one. So we have 40 responders killed in the United States this year due to struck by incidents. We had 65 last year, 44 the year before that. So responders face dangers from working on the roadway, and being able to have a hands-on training facility to train responders is going to be very, very beneficial. I'll be going on next week to Dallas, Texas, to actually train with the North Texas Tollway and to see and steal some of their best ideas to bring back to Pennsylvania for those hands-on training. Also going to work with connected and autonomous vehicles. Argo AI has a research facility right near where we're building the PennStart facility. They do the testing for Ford, for Volkswagen, for Lyft, as well as other companies. So that's a good partnership. We'll also be able to train both PennDOT and Turnpike workers on a closed track instead of trying to train them out on live roadways for the work zone safety aspect of it. Obviously, the Turnpike's a tolling agency, so we want to look at ITS and tolling technologies as well as PennDOT, and then commercial vehicle and transit vehicles. The facility where it's going to be built is, again, the Westmoreland County Regional Development Authority Park off of Newstand Interchange, about a mile off the interchange. The PennStart facility will be about 90 acres, so that wooded area there is where the PennStart facilities is going to be planned for. Work for that is probably going to proceed. The clearing of the trees will probably occur next year between January and March due to the bat habitat there. That they only have certain times of the year that they clear the trees, so they're going to work on getting those cleared as soon as possible. And again, there's where the Argo AI's current test track is. Now, I believe the plan is at some point to make this a smart loop that will go from this facility, and once the Argo vehicles are able to go out on the highways more, have them go into Pittsburgh and back in sort of a closed test loop here. Just what the facilities, the artist rendering is going to look like. It's going to have a 3-mile high-speed track. It will also have an infield that will have some roundabouts, some other roadway configurations. We'll also have a bridge, some tunnels, some elevation changes. So make it more what we could train responders for. We'll also have some interchanges with traffic signals to work there, and also a training facility building in order to do some in-classroom training. Again, this is going to be available for the responders to be able to train free of charge at least 50% of the time on the weekend, and also sometimes during the week. And we'll use the facility for PennDOT and Turnpike for testing, as well as working with some of our other stakeholders and partners in this. So I'd be happy to answer any questions. It looks like the facility, the agreement was signed by the Turnpike Commission on Tuesday. It's over to PennDOT now. PennDOT will sign the agreement and get it to the AG's office for execution. That usually takes 4 to 6 weeks. So once that's done, the agreement will be in place. This is probably a $20 to $25 million facility, and it's going to be run. The agreement is for a 20-year agreement to be run, so we'll be able to use the facility for at least 20 years before we have to renew the agreement. So I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Todd. Greatly appreciate that. I know you have a busy week here, so I appreciate you squeezing us in here for our presentation. Are there any questions for Todd?
Coming at you live from my living room.
Looks cozy. I'll just make one comment. It's great to see. It stinks that the original plans fell apart at Penn State, but it's great to see that this has moved into our region for our first responders and for our universities and everything. And not to mention, it's about 15 minutes from my house, so this will be excellent. So.
Yeah, I think this will be a facility that could be used very, very much. We were happy when we did the press event. We had Chief John Story, who's a good team partner for us, who's the assistant chief for the Hempfield Township Fire Department, and they helped us out. And we're excited. We want to get some training through our Penn Time group set up that when the facility opens, part of the facility should open by the end of 2023. With the rest of the facility, they would like to move aggressively and have it open by the end of 2024. So they're starting Monday, the 24th, on a meeting to just talk about some of the design elements they want to put in here, and go from there.
Hey guys, can you guys hear me? Anthony Castellone?
Yep, we can hear you, Anthony.
Hey guys, welcome. Todd, quick question for you. You plan on having your Penn Time session at Penn State this year, and also introducing this information there as well?
Yep. Yeah, we will have a pre-session at Penn State this year. We'll also share it out throughout the conference. I'm sure they're going to talk about it at the AV conference next week in Pittsburgh at Stage A&E, I guess it is. I think that's right. So yeah, we're going to try to. It's funny because Mark Kopko made the statement yesterday that we've accomplished more in 8 months with the Westmoreland Redevelopment Authority than we did in the 4 years. So we were trying to get this pushed through, working with Penn State. So they are being very, very aggressive to get this facility up and running. They will be the ones maintaining it for us. So that works out great.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions for Todd? We did have one
All right,
comment.
Well, think of anything? Yes, I'm sorry, Josh. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, we just have one comment. Tom Clavana, another manager at SPC. Will there be any job creation with this?
I hope so, but I don't know for sure. You know, I talked to Mark Kopko. Be a nice retirement job for somebody that's retiring at the end of 2024 after 25 years of Turnpike service. But yeah, I definitely think that there'll be some opportunities out there. You know, we'll need to have some people that are out there managing and even helping to move some vehicles around to that. So yes, I believe there will be opportunities out there for this. It's also going to help the economy for the local area too. You know, you're going to have people coming out there to test and to train. So, you know, I believe hotels, restaurants will benefit from this as well.
Thanks, Tom and Todd. Any other questions for Todd? All right. Well, thank you very much, Todd. We appreciate it.
All right.
I will move on to. Oh, yep. Thanks, Todd. We'll move on to item number 4 on the agenda. We squeezed this in last second, so I appreciate Doug Tomlinson's willingness to speak this morning. We wanted to mention the Highway Safety Traffic Operations Roadmap, which was recently completed back in September 22. So, Doug, I will turn it over to you.
All right, thank you. I'll make this brief just to give you an update that we have recently completed a roadmap, or what we consider more or less a business plan for highway safety and traffic operations. The initial idea started with us wanting to be able to better articulate.
Doug, are you still there?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it sounded like you cut out there for a second.
Okay. So when we developed the roadmap, we started with the idea of an investment prospectus, trying to give PennDOT leadership the idea of why they should invest in the things we do in highway safety and traffic. That was the first start of what we were thinking. We also thought it would be a good tool to share with external partners, the consulting communities, universities, others that look to do business with Histo. And we thought this would give them a good idea of what are the things that we're working towards, the challenges we're facing. So as folks try to market services to us, they have a better understanding of where we're going and what we're really trying to work on. And highway safety and traffic, we have about 85 people in our division across 4 different sections covering 12 different subject matters. So we wanted to help everybody in Histo better understand how they fit in and give them an idea of what some of their coworkers are doing, just so they feel like they're more engaged in the overall process. So give me a few highlights. Basically, we captured a few things that we see are cross-cutting, things like the Traffic Academy that we developed that is designed for new employees, both in Histo and the district traffic and traffic units as well. Starting to expand it a little bit more to some others inside of PennDOT. This year at the Transportation Safety Conference, we're going to start doing a version of this as a pre-conference workshop, taking some of the components this year. The 3 safety components from the Academy will be at TESC. And basically over 5 years, if people were interested in this from outside of PennDOT, they'd be able to see the components that are being taught in a classroom setting. They won't get access to the group project and the tours and such. But it's at least the start of trying to share this information with others outside of PennDOT. So basically, for each section in this, and I shared this with Josh, so he could give this to you folks if you want to see it in more detail. But basically, it's broken down into 12 categories, each of the units in Histo. And for each one, it covers a brief description of what is that unit responsible for. And, you know, it sounds easy, but trying to articulate this was a challenge for some of the units to make a clear, concise definition of what is it that we're doing for that unit. And then for each category, we have accomplishments that look back over the last 2 years, trying to highlight some of the more significant things we've done. We tried to keep out the more or less routine business, like updating publications and stuff like that, unless it's a brand new document, an elaborate training program. We tried to keep out the day-to-day things from the accomplishments. And then we go into what we're describing as where we're going for the next few years, trying to step back, each of the units step back and look at what they see is truly driving their business. And then from there, what are we doing? What does the road ahead look like here over the next couple of years? So it's laying out some of the more major undertakings that each of these units are going to be striving for over the next few years. So that's the document in a nutshell. It goes through and does the same thing for each of the 12 units. So if you're interested in understanding what Histo is about, what we're trying to do, and where we're heading, this is a good document to do that. So with that, I'll turn it back to Josh.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Doug. I appreciate it. Any questions for Doug Tomlinson? And yes, I do have a copy of this. I will make this available to the group after the presentation or after the meeting, as well as it'll be posted on our website as well. Any questions for Doug? All right, hearing none, we will move on to item number 5 on the agenda. I'd like to introduce Mr. Scott Thompson Graves. He is the Senior Vice President with WRA, and he will be talking about the City of Pittsburgh Smart Spines Project Update. Scott, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks. Are you guys able to see my screen, Josh?
Yep, you are good.
All right, perfect. Yeah, so Josh asked me to, I guess thanks for inviting me, Josh. Josh had asked me to give you guys just a brief status update on the City of Pittsburgh's Smart PGH project. So just a little bit of background. I know we've talked about this previously, during this venue here, but for those of you who aren't familiar with it, it's an advanced traffic signal and systems project along 8 corridors in and approaching the city of Pittsburgh. It includes a total of 135 intersections, and it's a pretty interesting deployment of a mix of different technology in order to improve mobility. Where we are in the project is actually a pretty exciting time. We've got a couple of upcoming procurements. We're going to procure the central priority system this winter. We're also going to procure the advanced multimodal adaptive signal system that'll be deployed on some of these corridors, as well as procuring the detection systems that we'll be using in order to support these applications. And I'll talk a little bit more about the detection system and some of the innovations that are involved with that here in a minute. We've also completed 90% plans that we're currently QCing for phase 1 of the project, which is 2nd Avenue and the 2 South Hills corridors. And we're also proceeding along with the design of the City of Pittsburgh's first traffic management center. So it should be pretty exciting as those projects go out to bid, next year. We're also got some pretty, exciting ongoing developments with the connected vehicle hardware and applications. We're meeting with OEMs and tier 1 operators within the city to talk about their needs and their interests in information that we can provide along these corridors. And we're also proceeding with the development of our advanced performance metric suite. And I'll talk a little bit about that in more detail here in a minute as well. So as far as the detection system, one of the interesting elements of the system is that we're deploying a passive detection system. And the University of Pittsburgh is currently evaluating 2 trial deployments in the city. For those of you who don't know, most of the signals in the city of Pittsburgh operate without detection, and most of the signals operate with pedestrian recall, which means that regardless of whether a pedestrian is present or not, the pedestrian phase is called in the traffic signal. So by using passive detection, which will basically treat pedestrians, bicyclists, kind of at the same level of cars that will arrive at the corner, are you guys not seeing my slides?
Yeah, they're not moving.
They're not moving. Okay.
Scott, you're showing the you're showing the main PowerPoint. You're not, if you have dual screens going, you're not showing the dual
Ah,
Yeah, that's probably what it is.
all right. So is this better?
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. So it'll be a little bit smaller. So sorry, you missed my really exciting graphics earlier. So there was the map. And then that's the bolding talking about the ongoing activities. And so from a passive detection standpoint, basically we're going to be able to detect all the areas that are shown in red on the intersection. So we'll be able to see if there are pedestrians in fact at each of the corners, if there are bicyclists or scooters within the bike lanes, and if there are pedestrians in the crosswalks. The goal is that, by making the intersections operate a little more sensitive to each of the different modes of traffic, we're hoping to reduce jaywalking, we're hoping to reduce delay for all modes of travel, and then also improve pedestrian and bike safety. So some of the challenges that we run into as we started to think through that system within the city of Pittsburgh specifically is that a lot of the corner radii at the city streets are actually, they're pretty tight. And so if a pedestrian arrives at a corner, like the one that's shown on kind of the forefront of the screen here, you don't really know which direction that they want to head in the traffic signal. And so that poses a specific challenge for passive detection. Another challenge is that by default, if you push a push button and actuate a pedestrian phase within the traffic signal, that is a locking call. And that poses some challenges as well, because a passive pedestrian detection system will detect someone as they arrive at the corner, but then if they depart, it'll have placed a pedestrian call, and with those locking calls, that'll then hold that phase, right, and call it even if nobody's there. At that point, you're pretty much back to square one, and the signal's operating like pedestrian recall. So some of the advances that we've been able to work through working with Intellite and their MaxTime folks, as well as the local provider of the software, is the introduction of a ped cancel feature, which I'll talk about. We've also included the ability to, since if we can detect pedestrians that are in the crosswalk, if a pedestrian is going slower than anticipated, we've got the ability to program the signal so that it will extend the adjacent phase. So thereby, if there's a pedestrian in the crosswalk, we basically just won't release the potentially conflicting vehicular movement in order to allow those pedestrians to safely cross the street. So we've got 2 tests that we're evaluating right now in the city. Both of them are using 360-degree cameras, but if there are any vendors, we're not committed to using 360 cameras. That just happens to be the technology that we were able to test in this case. One of the setups uses 2 360-degree cameras at an intersection with small radii, and then we've got another setup where we're using a single camera at an intersection with larger radii. So as far as the pedestrian rules that we're using in our traffic signals is by default, we're assuming if there's a pedestrian on any of the main street phases, so 2 or 6, that the other phase will automatically be called. So you'll always get the pedestrian phases called for basically both sides of the street. The same thing will happen on phases 4 and 8, which are the side street calls. That way it should help improve safety and mobility because we are trying to cut down jaywalking. So at the corners with the close ADA landings that I described earlier, we've established a set of rules in order to help overcome some of the challenges with not knowing which direction the pedestrians want to head. Yeah, so any pedestrian arriving at any of the corners will automatically call both the Main Street and the side street pedestrian phases. So the next ped phase in order will automatically be called, and that'll be a locking call. So if they arrive and ped phase 2 is going to be the next phase that's going to be called in order, that's automatically going to be called. If the pedestrian then departs the corner, then the remaining phases will be canceled. So they won't be called if there's no longer a pedestrian there. And like I said, that's a new functionality for the controllers that's recently been deployed, and it was some custom programming that was required in order to make that work. So the University of Pittsburgh is actually doing a study before and after the deployment of the pedestrian detection, and at both of these locations. So they're evaluating not just the effectiveness or the efficacy of the equipment at detecting the pedestrians, but they're also evaluating things from a design perspective. Neither one of these intersections are intersections that we designed. They were just pilots that were available elsewhere in the city. So we're evaluating, what the size of the pedestrian zone should be. Right now, if you kind of think about it, in a city street, it's a little bit different than, pedestrians are different than cars. If a car shows up in a left turn lane, most likely they're going to turn left. And if they're in a right turn lane, they're most likely going to turn right. So they, generally behave a little bit more in a more predictable manner. But a pedestrian may show up at a corner on a city street, and they might just sit there, right? They might just sit there and smoke a cigarette or wait for the bus in the pedestrian detection zone, or they might just be walking through. And so we've had to work and basically determine, what level of a delay should we put on that detection zone. If you make it too long, you'll have pedestrians that get frustrated because maybe they'll miss the opportunity for the next call. If you make it too short, you're going to pick up more stray pedestrians that don't necessarily want to cross the street. So we're evaluating these systems from, like I said, both an equipment perspective and also a design and an operations perspective. And we're looking forward to getting those results soon. Another advancement that we're making, or that we're requiring from our detection system, is basically to treat the detection that we're going to deploy at the intersections, not just like traffic signal detection, but more like an ITS camera as well, because a lot of the cameras or the radar or the other detection systems that are available can actually get a lot more information than, hey, is there somebody in my detection zone or not? So most of the equipment these days can produce information on what type of object is it? Is it a truck? Is it a bus? Is it a car? Is it a pedestrian? Is it a bike? Is it a bike? A scooter? So most of the equipment can do that, and they can also track the trajectory of the users of the intersection. And so we're requiring the selected vendor to be willing and to agree to provide that information to anybody using an open API. So that information can be then transmitted. If you think about it kind of downstream, we can use it for more advanced performance metrics. Instead of just knowing that there's a pedestrian at the corner, we'll know that there are 3 at the corner. We can evaluate, speeds. The information can be used for near miss tracking and for safety evaluations. It could also be used for testing by the OEMs and the tier 1s that are operating within the city streets. So we can provide information from them. And it could also be used by researchers, which there are many in the area, like Carnegie Mellon and the University of Pittsburgh, that can use this information for both development of new applications and technology, and also evaluating, how systems work. So it's a pretty exciting way to kind of think about things when you look at the advancements that are available these days. Other elements that we're working on are the performance metric suite. And so if you think about the system and all that it's going to have available to it, so we're going to be able to transmit automated traffic signal performance metrics to the traffic management center. We're going to be able to get bike, bus, pedestrian, auto, truck counts and delay, by movement for every intersection in the city, as well as the object tracking and trajectory data that I talked about earlier. We'll be able to get OD flows and speeds through the Wi-Fi or Bluetooth detection that we'll put out there. And then we're also going to have air quality, pavement surface condition, and weather sensors that'll be deployed at locations within the system. So we'll have all that information available to the traffic management center. At the same time, with our cloud-based priority and preemption system that's going to be deployed, we'll have direct connections with transit agencies' AVL system, the public safety AVL system, And so we'll be able to get and use data and information like that to help operate the system, and also, operate the system to the benefit of the transit agency and the public safety. And then we'll also have public agency third-party data. We'd like to be able to, get a feed into the PennDOT crash information tool. There's autonomous parking meters that the city has deployed in the 311 system. And all that information will be available to the, the center and to researchers in order to help better operate the system. And from a connected vehicle standpoint, there's actually opportunities for two types of information that we can transmit. The first would be high latency data. And, by high latency, it could be anywhere between like a second or, 3 days, depending on the data feed. But a high latency API can be established through the cloud between our system at the traffic management center and other OEMs or tier ones that are operating in the city, as well as other parties such as WeJo or NREX Signal IQ. So we can provide information that would be valuable out to them that they can use for navigation, environmental, is the pavement icy, is there snow happening, for example, congestion data, as well as traditional connected vehicle map and SPAT data. We also have the opportunity to put in roadside units that would be able to provide a very low latency connection. And so for that, we'll be able to provide the object tracking that I discussed earlier from the detection system, as well as the SPAT data, map data, and basic safety messages. So we're in the process now of, as I said earlier, meeting with a lot of the, OEMs that are operating within the city and the tier ones to find out what information is useful and to determine what test cases we would want to roll out. But the challenge that you have with these systems is that you've got to turn that data into actionable information. And right now, we're working through that process in more detail. And if you think about a system like this, this is a brand new system for the city of Pittsburgh. It's going to come with a lot more maintenance burden. It's going to come a lot more with with a lot more burden for the city to be able to operate and take advantage of the system. And so you've got to think about performance metrics in 3 different ways. So the first is, what performance measures can we produce that can assist with the day-to-day operations of the system? It could be a flag that a detector is no longer operable. It also could be something that such as the the bathtub floods, and the department PennDOT is going to shift traffic onto the arterial streets, or perhaps there's an incident that occurs on the parkway and traffic needs to divert over, or an incident occurs along one of these routes, or we observe snowy conditions and the city needs to change the way the signals operate in order to account for the kind of the longer offsets between the intersections because traffic slows down. So the expectation wouldn't be that you're going to have to hire a professional traffic engineer that can digest real-time automatic traffic signal performance metrics in order to make decisions. So we're working on developing a set of performance measures that would assist with those day-to-day standard operating procedures. And that'll help with the overall maintenance and functioning of the system. The next level up would be the performance measures that would help improve the system, day over day or year over year. So for example, it could be similar to the reporting that you can get from the NREX Signal IQ data, and that, hey, your delay is a lot worse today than it was yesterday. And it has been the case for the last 6 days. You should look into it and do more about it. But that would be more performance measures that would be useful for a traffic engineer who might need a little bit more detail to make a more substantive change. Then the third set of performance measures are equally important to the first two, because with the additional maintenance burden for the maintenance and operations of the system and the additional staffing, you're going to need to maintain this system over time, and that's going to come at some expense. So we need to make sure that we're producing coherent performance measures from the system that are meaningful to folks like the mayor's office or district executives, other folks that don't necessarily want the nitty-gritty details of the system, but they do want to know that the system is performing as they'd expected and helping them meet their overall city and regional goals. And so it's pretty interesting to be walking through this process right now, because as we get into it, there's just a lot of information that you can get out of all of this data that the system is producing. And with that, I can open up to any questions.
Yeah, thank you, Scott. Thank you very much for presenting. I know it's been a busy week for you travel-wise, so thanks again for presenting. We have one question in the comment from Noah Forbeck. How well do the detection systems detect wheelchairs as pedestrians? I don't see any analytics for wheelchairs.
Well, it should detect them, you know, if it's somebody in the sidewalk, it should detect them with the passive detection system. We'd have to see the object identification generally comes from the chip manufacturer. So if it's got an NVIDIA chip, the NVIDIA, you know, would have done some research into identifying folks as an object. So we'd have to see if they would just be detected as a pedestrian or if they would be detected as somebody in the wheelchair. But certainly we would want to make sure that they're picked up so that they can be provided service at the intersection. And the system is also being designed so that both the passive detection system and the push buttons will both be able to you know, actuate and identify a need for service. Were there any more questions, Josh?
Sorry, I was on mute. I apologize. Talking to myself. Yeah, one question from Tom Clavan of SPC wants to know about transit signal priority and is there built-in capacity for this?
Yes. So basically, we're going to be using a cloud-based priority and preemption system. And so we are working with PRT now because the transit AVL and the priority system is a key component of their bus rapid transit system. And so, you know, we're working closely with them to make sure that this system is deployed and ready when the BRT begins to operate. And it's also an expandable system so that it won't be just deployed on the BRT routes. It can be deployed at any route within the city that PRT and the city agree would benefit from that technology.
Excellent. Thank you, Tom and Noah. Any other questions for Scott? All righty. Hearing none, thank you very much, Scott, for the presentation. We greatly appreciate it. And so last but not least here, we will bring up our last presentation before we get into some quick ongoing activities here at SPC and some updates, and we can open the floor for any discussions. Last but not least, we wanted to, myself and Keith Johnson of Gannett Fleming, wanted to give a quick presentation on the State Route 19 I-70, I-79 diverging diamond interchange before and after study. Traditionally, this is one of the first ones that we've actually done here at SPC and working with Gannett Fleming. And sort of an additional service to our planning partners at the district. We normally do road safety audits, but this time we were requested to do a before and after study from PennDOT District 12. And so, yeah, we'll give a quick presentation. Keith, do you want to share the presentation or do you want to share the map first?
You can see the map, right?
Yep.
Okay. Just want to make sure I can thing here. And there's the presentation. Can you see that?
We are good.
All right. We're good.
Yeah, if you just want to go to slide number 2 there.
Sure.
There we go. Yeah, so like I mentioned before, I wanted to briefly talk about the diverging diamond interchange before and after study here. So some of the things that we'll go through here, and mostly this will be Keith. I just wanted to give a quick introduction to the study here. We'll talk about the purpose of the study, the project overview, the alternatives considered, talk about the crash analysis, the level of service comparison, and then finally get into the nitty-gritty here of the benefit cost analysis, and then wrap up with a conclusion here. So next slide. Again, the purpose of the study really was to examine the I-79, the interchange here, to evaluate the effectiveness of those improvements. Again, the diverging diamond, the signal implementation, the new concrete, the new bridge on I-70, everything there, and really analyze the before period, the time period of 2011 to 2013, which is 3 years, and after construction, the 3 years of 17 to 19. Obviously, we wanted to try to avoid the COVID-19 time period because traffic was all out of whack. And then we did additional counts there in 2021. But really, it was a bit of a challenge early on when we first realized that the segments offsets actually changed when before and after, which made it a bit difficult on the upfront when we were trying to gather some data. But we eventually figured it out. So Keith, I will turn it over to you to walk us through the presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Todd. Thanks, Josh. Todd was on before. Project overview. I had forgotten about the whole segment offset thing. I think I blocked that out. Thanks, Josh. So just to give everyone a general idea, I think everyone out in Pittsburgh area knows about where this project is, and that's why I was throwing a map out. For those of you not familiar with it, so downtown Pittsburgh, if you get down I-79 south to what we call Little Washington out here, it's right outside of Little Washington, and this is where the DDI is right now. For those of you that know me, when we do these field views and things like that, the key thing here is when you go out, where are you going to eat? There is a Waffle House here. And just to make sure our friends out in Harrisburg understand, this is the Waffle House map. Harrisburg has 4 Waffle Houses. We only have 2 out here. So there is a Waffle House gap out here. So we went to the Waffle House. I went out with Kate. She had found out I never went to a Waffle House. So it was worth it. So once we do the presentation here, if you don't have any questions on the benefit cost, and that's boring, I have the Waffle House site up here, and we can cover that. So what we have here is I-70-79. It's combined out here. Again, if you're not familiar with the area, has an ADT of about 34,000 westbound, 31 eastbound. And this the interchange, the previous interchange is with SR-19. It's mostly called Mertland Avenue in our area that we're covering here, but it's also called Washington Road north of the interchange. This is what it looked like before, and I'll get into that in a little bit. But it was a cloverleaf. We have a weaving section on the interstate, and we have a weaving section on 19. Next, just to kind of show you, this is during the construction, and then this is the final product here. Briefly, I'm assuming most of the people on the call understand how diverging diamonds work, but I'll do a brief one. And just background with this was the first divergent diamond that we built in Pennsylvania. There's a couple others in the works or already constructed, but this was the first one. Real quick with diverging diamonds, if you're not familiar with them. And I would recommend, if you're not, it gets a little confusing, just hop on YouTube, type in diverging diamond, you'll see how these work. More or less, if we're coming up, if we're going north on 19 here, you have a signalized intersection here, you have a signalized intersection here, and then once you go through the intersection, the traffic is switching sides. You're in Europe for a little bit, okay? You're switching sides, then you're coming up. The reason for that is, one, you end up with only needing to do 2 phases at the signals, and 2, if you have a lot of left turns, you've basically eliminated the left turn. So any of the traffic from this direction that wants to take the ramp, they won't have to go through the intersection. So that has 2 cases. 1, it reduces the phases of the signal, and 2, usually if you have a lot of left turns either direction, it reduces the number of lanes that you need in this midpoint, which was sort of key with them picking the DDI for this. We mentioned the purpose and need. So a point of access study was done in 2012. And if you're not familiar with point of access, is more or less they're we institute those whenever we're looking at changing an interchange on the interstate, and it's a full study of documenting different alternatives, the pluses and minuses, also signing, things of that nature. I won't go through all of these, but these were the basic needs of the study. There was a pavement issue out there. In the future, the level of service, the existing level of service wasn't that bad, but future projections were showing you're going to have a deteriorating level of service. The Cloverleaf interchange itself was substandard. Everything from the horizontal and design elements, the XL, D cells, obviously there's a weave in there. So it was just deficient in that case. It was documented a high number of crashes along 70 and 79, and just the bridge at 19 just needed some preservation work. And then this is just a figure kind of highlighting the things that I just mentioned here. We have a weave on the interchange. We also have a weave on 19. It's officially not a weave, but that's how the traffic moved there. Plus all the XLD cells for the ramps and everything were substandard. The alternatives they considered in the point of access, there were obviously a no-build situation. They looked at just improving the cloverleaf, looked at a standard diamond and a modified diamond, also looked at a spewy and went with a diverging diamond. And not to get, a lot of this is I'm going to skip over some of these things. It was more to provide SPC with all of this, and if we want to, Josh, I meant to ask you, is the report online?
It should be. If not, I will make that a priority to get it up there ASAP.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, no, it just dawned on me this morning. Obviously, it makes sense to go through the report to get the big background, because one of the things with the DDI is a lot of times when people are talking about them, they're comparing it to a standard diamond interchange versus the DDI. And we didn't have a standard diamond interchange here. We had a cloverleaf, but the advantages of the diverging diamond was why they went with it. And it helps we document the reasoning behind all that in the report if you're interested in that. And the issues that came up with as they are looking at just updating the cloverleaf or looking at a standard diamond interchange, they were requiring a 4-lane bridge on 7079, which introduced excessive costs. They were going to have to replace both the bridges at 19 for the cloverleaf because of the substandard deficiencies there. If they went with either the spewy or the diamond, this is what I was talking about, the advantage of the DDI. They were going to need dual left turn lanes from 19 to get to the entrance ramps. With that, that would have affected the current location of the bridge piers for 19. So there was a cost issue there. And that's what I was talking about, this dual bridges here. So alternative 3 actually came in highest with the cost estimate. So, and there were design exceptions with all that stuff. With the DDI, there are advantages and disadvantages. Like I said, we don't need the dual left lanes. My pointer here, sorry. We don't need the dual left lanes. Eliminates the traffic conflicts, simple two-phase signal. As far as conflict points, comparing that to a standard interchange, DDIs have about 14 conflict points versus 26. And we didn't need to replace the 3-lane. We're needing a 3-lane bridge on 70, 79. They were, with all these, they were widening 70, 79, but we didn't need to replace the dual bridges. In so much that the piers stayed in the same. We did widen the bridges, but the piers stayed the same, and we didn't have to worry about moving those. There were some substandard things with the bridge. They had to raise it, but there was a savings there with the bridges. Disadvantage with this one, again, usually we're comparing a standard diamond with a DDI. One is we are introducing 2 new signals. So right now, previous to the project, it was a weave type condition on 19. So we're introducing 2 new signals. The speed would have to be reduced because of the signals, and just everyone being a little antsy about, coming up with a DDI, and would people be confused by it all and what have you. Again, just citing the before conditions, it was 4 lanes here, and we have 2 weaves on 19 and 79. And then after, again, adding the signals, but also eliminating the weaves. Also, just improvement overall to the whole ramp configurations as far as the deficiencies with the XL and D cells, those were all fixed. And 70 was widened to 6 lanes. Crash analysis, and I'm not going to go in depth with all this, but just to give you an idea. So before we did this, we're always trying to figure out what do we think we're going to see here. Obviously, with the elimination of the weave on the interstate, we thought we'd see crash reductions on the interstate as a whole. And then 19, again, just doing our little guessing at the beginning here, we weren't sure what was going on. We're introducing 2 signals, we're removing the weave. We thought it would be a wash, or we might even see more crashes, but minor crashes because of the signals introduction. The before condition here, again, 3-year time frame. We are looking at 29 crashes on 70 and 10 on 19. This is the before condition. And then the after condition, what we saw was crashes went from about 29 on 70 to 16, and we also got a reduction in crashes on 19. That was somewhat of a surprise. The only thing we can really, again, not diving into everything, only thing we saw there just sort of happened in the office. One of our bridge engineers actually lives down here. We mentioned we were doing a study, and of course, all traffic people love DDIs. We think these things are great. And I mentioned we're doing a study of the DDI, and he goes, "Oh, I hate that thing." I'm like, "Why do you hate that thing?" And it's like, "Oh, they put those signals in." I was like, "What do you mean?" It's like, "Oh, I used to just sail through here. There was no, there's a signal here and a signal down here." And he said, "I just used to sail." I assume when he says sail, that means he drove really fast. So I don't know if we can contribute it to it, but it's possible because we introduced the signals. People were speeding through here. It's very easy to go through there quite quickly before the signals. We might have had a traffic calming effect on this. So when you look at these numbers and we have them summed at the bottom, the main thing that we came out of this is we reduced crashes on the interstate by about 55%, and on 19 crashes reduced by 50%. So that's a big takeaway with all this. I'm going to skip through these somewhat, just another way of looking at the before and after, and those severity types down there, that comes into play when we do the benefit cost. We assign costs depending on the type of crashes that we're talking about. Just give you a general idea of what was going on year by year. And with the crash types, again, this is just I-70 here. We eliminated angle crashes were eliminated, obviously because of the weave. That's the main reason for that. On 19, again, just a reduction of these. And just to point out here, we eliminated, we had no hit fixed objects in the 3-year after, which is surprising. You usually have those. And luckily, we had no pedestrian crashes. So those are some advantages that we got as far as looking at the types of crashes. Doing a level of service, at first we weren't sure whether we had congestion issues or not. French engineering helped us with doing some data collection out there. and some analysis. We decided to collect it. Also, the traffic from the point of access study, it was published in 2013, but those were based on counts that were originally done 6 years prior. So we just decided we needed fresh counts to do this. Again, I'm going to skip quickly through this part. It boils down to, as far as level of service comparison on 70, it was functioning at about a level service C, sometimes a D at certain points for the before condition. In the after condition, we're at a B or an A type of thing. So obviously it got improved. Plus we widened it, so the weave got away and we widened. At the same time, we weren't necessarily in a seriously deficient level of service out there as far as the time frames we were talking about. 19, again, we introduced 2 signals. However, they operate fairly well out there. In the before condition, in the weave area, it was operating at about a C, and depending on the time of day, with the intersection, we're either operating at a C or a B. So it seems to be operating fine. Obviously, travel time dropped because we introduced the signals. So the benefit cost analysis, there's a number of different ways you can do benefit cost. When Bill and Jeff were talking about these NOFO grants, if you get involved with that, there is a very detailed way about doing benefit costs, and through the ages, everyone does them a little differently. Our basic setup is the same though. We were lucky to have construction costs available for this. You want to analyze those costs. And with the benefits, we were just looking at crashes. There is a way to sign dollar amounts to those crashes, and I'll show you where that is. And then it really boils down to you have your benefit, which is your savings from the crash reduction, and your annualized cost of the project. Oh, I had one slide. I did remove that one. One thing with the annual improvement cost, so we knew how much the project cost, and we actually did, the actual construction cost included things more than the diverging diamond. There was some work done toward the west. We eliminated those, and then we eliminated a couple other items from the actual contractor cost. We had about 34,000. You apply a discount rate, and there's some background with the discount rate. It's more or less, the idea is you're applying a cost of using that funding. Again, those NOFO grants, they detail what you should use for that. Personally, I hate these things because they can fluctuate so much. So we did this at the beginning of 2022. They're sort of based on Treasury rates. And since then, I just looked it up this morning. This is sort of based on the 30-year Treasury rate for what we were using. That rate has changed by 3% since we did our study. So they can be all over the place, and they have a profound effect on your number here. But just wanted to show you, this is the methodology we use. So we more or less converted 34 million into an annual number of 771,000. As far as getting numbers for crashes and a value for them, this sounds kind of cold and analytical, but this is PennDOT publishes their Pennsylvania crash and facts, and these are annual numbers they get as far as how much crashes go. That number is actually for Pennsylvania, but what we're doing is we're using that average cost column here for us to do our calculations. So a property damage only crash has a value of $12,000. If you notice, fatalities are quite large. These are based on actuary tables. I haven't explored how they've been doing these recently, but usually they're actuary tables. Obviously, the crash itself involves a lot of medical personnel, incident management personnel, but actually that number factors in loss of wages for the fatal injury. So those numbers are always much larger whenever you're doing these calculations. Luckily out here, we had no fatalities in our history, either the before or after. Looking at the interchange over, we just kind of looked at a 20-year period. There's only been a few fatalities out there, which is a nice thing to keep in mind here. So what it boils down to, those types of crashes, we assign a dollar amount and you more or less just add them up on how much they are. Our before and after savings is here. Obviously we had about 15, 16 reductions in crashes. So this is the dollar amount for the crashes on 70, 19. That added up to an annual savings from a crash standpoint of 839. So just taking those two numbers together, putting them together, you get that benefit cost ratio of over 1. Theoretically, if it's over 1, the benefits are higher than the cost. So from an pure economic standpoint of what you're looking at, it was advantageous to do the project. The conclusions of the study, and we get in a little more things here, this is the takeaway with this. We have the benefit cost. The key thing, like I said, we got about a 50% reduction in crashes on both 70 and 19, which is great. We assigned the dollar amounts here. We did want to flag, however, and if we were going to look at travel times and do certain things, we introduced 2 signals. That does slow travel time on 19. Again, the level of service is acceptable, but don't want to just make it all, it's a nice panacea. If you don't have signals and then you're introducing signals, you are going to affect travel times. So that's it as far as, sorry I ran through that, but we wanted to keep everyone on time here. So any questions for me or Josh on the project?
Yeah, thanks, Keith. Any questions? All right, hearing none. Thank you very much, Keith. Much
You're
appreciated.
welcome.
And it is not on our website, which I don't know why it's not. So I will make sure.
Sorry about that.
That's all right. Hey, that's my fault. So we'll get that up on our website under our ops and safety section. Keith, you could stop sharing your screen if you don't mind there.
As I can figure out how I will.
No problem. I'm just going to put back up
the. Take it over.
Let's see.
Thanks.
There we go. I should be able to.
Yeah, thank you.
I just wanted to go back to share the agenda here. And so, yeah, I just wanted to quickly go through some of the other activities that's going on here at SPC and some of the things, some of the other programs and initiatives that are going on. So first, I'll turn it over to Evan, transportation planner here at SPC. Evan, you want to take it away with some updates on some of the safety stuff?
Sure. Thank you, Josh. So we have an upcoming RSA. It's actually next week in District 10. It's in Armstrong County, just east of Worthington Borough on 422 at the intersection of Glade Run Road. That'll be a multiple day RSA out there. And then we have a corridor operations planning study that's coming up also in the fall, slated for November, maybe December, in Copple Borough in Beaver County. It's requested by the mayor. And that's on SR 18 between 351 and 551, District 11 also. And that's what we have on our schedule so far this fall. Look forward to getting that stuff done and maybe presenting to you guys here in the near future. Thank you.
Thanks, Evan. I was going to turn it over to Chris Jaros, but unfortunately he is out sick today. But I just wanted to give I'll cover his portion real quick on the CMP. We're continuing to analyze our 2021 CMP INRIX data. That should almost be updated on our CMP website. We are currently going through now. We've identified all of the corridors, all of our CMP corridors that do not have INRIX data, and going through and doing travel time runs and calculating the necessary metrics for those. So we have a couple more of those left. As you all know, we're going through our strategy evaluation for our CMP corridors. We've done all 10 counties except for Allegheny County in the city of Pittsburgh. Those surveys are currently being developed by Chris, and those should be out on the street here in the next coming weeks here. So take a look at that if you're in Allegheny County to comment on some of the corridors and strategies to help alleviate traffic. So I'll go back up to myself here. Just wanted to give a quick update on our regional traffic signal program, Cycle 4, as well as Cycle 5. Currently, we are in Cycle 4. We had a let date back in the springtime for PennDOT District 12, 2 projects, one in North Huntington on Route 30 and one in Penn Township. We are still waiting for the signal equipment to come in due to logistics as well as just everything that's going on in the economy wise. We're still waiting for our signal equipment to come in for those 2 projects. But hopefully we will be out there sooner rather than later. Moving on to PennDOT District 10, we have 4 projects, one in the Worthington, West Franklin area with 2 signals, and then 3 projects in Cranberry Township, one on Rochester Road, one in Cranberry Township and Marshall on State Route 19, and then Cranberry, Adams, and Seven Field along 228. And again, we let a few months ago, we've had our status updates with the contractor. Unfortunately, again, we are waiting on equipment to get out there and implement our timings as well as equipment. As far as PennDOT District 11 goes, we have 6 different projects, one in Badenboro, Plumboro, City of Newcastle, one in Scott, Collier, and Heidelberg Township on State Route 50, Bellevue Borough, and then North Fayette, Robinson Towns, up near the town center there. We have an anticipated let date of January of 2023 in that, and I do anticipate a delay in construction again due to everything that's going on with the signal equipment. But nonetheless, we're making progress with Cycle 4. As far as Cycle 5 goes, we have opened up Cycle 5, and we solicited for projects. We have a few projects that came down, and we're currently reviewing them as we speak. We will be getting those out to our district partners for their review and their input on the projects as well, and then continuing to move forward with the Cycle 5 there, and eventually a RFP coming here probably next year, probably late summer, early fall timeframe. Keep an eye out for an RFP for a consultant to help us with the program. A couple other things here. We will be kicking off an update to our ITS, regional ITS architecture here. So stakeholders, if you've been involved in the process before, we'll be reaching out to you again to be part of the process for that update. We will also be kicking off an update to our regional operations plan in the next couple weeks. So look for an email from PennDOT Central Office from Pierce or Frank Cavateo. In conjunction, we'll be working with them for an update for the Western Region TMC. However, we will be taking the lead in the SPC region for that update. We'll be doing that in-house. And last but not least, I wanted to mention our long-range plan update. We are currently underway with an update. It's not a full-blown update, more of a facelift to our long-range transportation plan. So we won't be doing any of the expert panels if you're familiar with that in the past, but more of an update to the projects, the policies, and so on and so forth. Keep an eye out. We have some public meetings scheduled here over the next couple months. The first one beginning, actually, I think it's next Tuesday with Washington County. I believe that is in person. And then if you'd like to schedule, keep an eye out on our website or our social media, or just let me know, myself, Dominic DeAngier, Andy Waple, Ryan Gordon. We can get you the following meetings as well. Some of those will be in person. Some of them will be hybrid as well. So with that being said, I will open it up to the floor. If there's any comments anyone wants to make or any further discussion on anything that was presented today, I can open up the floor for any questions, comments.
Hey, Josh, it's Evan real quick.
Oh, yeah, go ahead, Evan.
I just wanted to apologize for my omission of the TIM program.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Let everybody know that we are still meeting every month, and the next couple months meetings are going to be virtual, so I offer it up to a larger crowd if possible. And there are going to be TIM trainings also hosted by SPC, and performed by our partner Chuck Yorks again at Fleming. And those will also be continued through virtually through the winter months. And so if anybody has any interest in the TIM training program, they can reach out to us here at SPC. I think that's it. So thank you guys.
Thanks, Evan. Any, again, we'll open up the floor here for any comments, discussion, and if anyone wants to mention any initiatives or anything, we can open up to the floor. Yes, Jason, we can get you the information on the TIM meetings. Evan, if you wouldn't mind sending, or TIM trainings, any information to Jason Theakston at Washington County, if you wouldn't mind.
Not a problem. Thank you.
All right. Well, hearing none, we're close to our time anyway. So I appreciate everyone being on the call this morning. Thank you to our presenters. Last but not least, I just wanted to quickly mention a couple upcoming meetings, some shameless plugs for some other meetings here. I anticipate our next Operations and Safety Forum being in February, on February 23rd, 2023 at 10 a.m. That'll probably be virtual. We will hopefully be in our new building. We will see potentially being in our new building down in the Strip District. Also, we have a couple other upcoming meetings, our Regional TDM Partners meeting on November 3rd at 10 a.m. If you'd like to get on that list, please contact Anthony Hickton. And then last but not least here, December 6th, most of us will be gearing up to get to State College, but nonetheless, if you'd like to check out our Active Transportation Forum, please contact Leanne Cheney for that. And Joe, yes, we will, Evan, if you wouldn't mind sending Joe West the same information on the TIM meetings as well as Jason. So with that being said, thank you all very much for your attendance today and your participation. And we look forward to seeing you in a couple months. Thank you all.